Hello, my friends, and welcome back to Streamline English. I hope you are having a wonderful day. Get comfortable and take a slow breath in and out. Tonight we travel back more than 2,000 years to a time of kings, armies, and impossible journeys. You don't need to understand every word. Just listen and follow the story with me. Did you know that there was once a young king? A boy, really, who took power before he was 20, who went on to build the largest empire the world had ever seen at that time. He led his armies out of a small kingdom in northern Greece and pushed east and south and east again, conquering people after people, city after city, kingdom after kingdom, all the way to the edges of what his world knew. By the time he was 32 years old, he had conquered lands stretching from Greece to Egypt to Persia, all the way to the borders of what is now India, an empire of unimaginable size. And in all those years of campaigning, through all those battles against enemies large and small, he was never once defeated. What kind of person could do all of this before they even reached middle age? And what drove a young man to keep pushing, keep marching, keep conquering, even when his own men begged him to stop and come home? His name was Alexander, and history knows him as Alexander the Great. If you enjoy learning English through epic true stories like this, please subscribe to Streamline English. It really helps our little channel grow. Thank you, my friend. Our story begins in the year 356 BC, that is, around 356 years before the birth of Christ, more than 2,000 years ago, in the small kingdom of Macedon in the northern part of what is now Greece. A boy was born, and he was given a name that meant defender of men. His father was Philip, the king of Macedon, a powerful and ambitious ruler who was already in the process of uniting the many quarreling city-states of Greece under his control. A city-state is an independent city that governs itself, and the land around it like its own small country. The ancient Greek world was made up of many such city-states, each with its own laws and army. From the beginning, this boy was raised to be a king. He was given the finest education, trained in riding and fighting and the arts of leadership. But one part of his education stood out above all others. When Alexander was around 13 years old, his father arranged for him to be taught by one of the greatest minds in all of history. His teacher was Aristotle, a man who was not just a philosopher, but a scientist, a naturalist, and perhaps the most brilliant thinker of the ancient world. Under Aristotle's guidance, Alexander fell in love with learning. He read widely: history, science, medicine, philosophy. He treasured his books. He carried a copy of the great epic poem about the Trojan War with him on his campaigns, keeping it under his pillow alongside his sword. He was not only a warrior in training, he was a student with a deep and curious mind. But learning would not be enough. The world was about to demand something else of the young prince. When Alexander was just 16 years old, his father, King Philip, left him in charge of the kingdom while he went away to campaign. And while Philip was gone, a nearby tribe rebelled. Without hesitation, the 16-year-old prince led an army, put down the rebellion, and founded a new city, naming it after himself. He was 16. 2 years later, Philip was assassinated, murdered. And Alexander, at the age of 20, became king of Macedon. Many people thought that the young king would be easy to challenge. Neighboring peoples who had been under Macedon's power saw their chance to break free. Rivals at home stirred, and Alexander moved with astonishing speed and decisiveness, crushing each challenge in turn, securing his kingdom and its borders with a ferocity and cleverness that left everyone stunned. Within 2 years of becoming king, Alexander had done what his father had long dreamed of. He had unified the Greek city-states and was preparing for the greatest military adventure of the ancient world. His father's great ambition had been to lead a Greek army east against the vast and powerful Persian Empire, at that time the greatest empire in the known world. Alexander would fulfill that dream and go far, far beyond it. He set out in 334 BC with an army, and he did not come home for more than 10 years. Alexander's march eastward was one of the most astonishing military and geographic journeys in all of history. As he moved through the lands of the Persian Empire and beyond, he did something that was rare for a conqueror of his age. He did not only seek to destroy, he sought, in many places, to absorb. He adopted the customs of the peoples he conquered. He wore Persian dress, observed local traditions, and tried to bring together Greek and Persian cultures. He founded many new cities along his route, most of them named Alexandria after himself. These cities were not just military outposts. They became centers of trade, culture, and the mixing of ideas, spreading Greek language and culture across a vast world. This process, the blending and spreading of Greek culture across the East, would later be called Hellenism, from the Greek word for the Greek people. Hellenism means the influence of Greek culture, language, and ideas on other civilizations. Its effects lasted for centuries. As he moved through the Persian Empire, he defeated the armies of the Persian king, the most powerful king in the world at that time, in several great battles. He captured vast cities and enormous treasures. He was welcomed in some places, fiercely resisted in others. He freed cities that had long been under Persian control, and he fought great battles on rivers and mountain passes. He was wounded multiple times in battle, but he always led from the front, sharing the dangers with his men, never hiding behind others. This was part of what inspired such fierce loyalty in his soldiers. To be loyal is to remain devoted and faithful. His men trusted him because he was always with them, sharing their hardships, eating what they ate, fighting as they fought. And this loyalty would be tested over and over on the long march to come. Alexander fought many great battles during his campaigns. Let me tell you about the spirit that ran through all of them. Time and again, Alexander and his armies found themselves outnumbered, facing huge Persian forces, foreign kings, and unfamiliar terrain. The odds were often against them. But Alexander had something that compensated for numbers: brilliance. He was one of the greatest military tacticians in history. A tactician is a person who is skilled at planning and executing maneuvers in battle, finding clever ways to gain advantages over the enemy. His battle plans were bold, creative, and almost always worked. He would study his enemy's position. He would find the weak point, or create one through clever maneuver. And then he would strike that point with overwhelming force and speed. His cavalry, his mounted soldiers on horseback, were among the finest in the world, and he led them in person, often into the very thick of the fighting. The result was extraordinary: Across more than a decade of campaigning, Alexander won every major battle he fought. He conquered Persia. He conquered Egypt, where he was welcomed as a liberator and a god-king. He pushed into Central Asia, through lands that are today Afghanistan and Pakistan. He crossed the great mountain ranges of the Hindu Kush. And then, at last, he reached the rivers of what is now India, and the edge of the known world as his men understood it. But there, something happened that not even Alexander could overcome. After years of marching, of fighting, of victory after victory, Alexander's men finally broke. They had been away from home for nearly a decade. They were exhausted, far from their families, on the other side of the known world. And now Alexander was asking them to keep going, to cross into India, to conquer still more, to push on to the edge of the world. And this time, his soldiers refused. They had followed him through everything. They had loved him and feared him, and followed him into impossible dangers. But they would go no further. They missed their homes, their wives, their children. They had given Alexander everything, and they were done. It was perhaps the first time in Alexander's life that he met an obstacle he could not overcome by force of will or genius. His men wept, and so did he, but in the end he listened, he turned back. The return journey was difficult and cost many lives. And Alexander himself, on reaching Babylon, the great city that he planned to make the capital of his vast empire, fell ill. He was 32 years old, at the height of his power, with an empire stretching across the known world. And after a short illness, which is still debated by historians, Alexander died. He had conquered the world, and then the world moved on without him. What happened to his empire after his death? It broke apart. His generals, men who had served him loyally, who had marched across the world with him, turned on one another and divided the empire among themselves. None of them could hold together what Alexander had built alone. But Alexander's impact did not die with him. The cities he founded, the cultures he blended, the trade routes he opened, the spread of the Greek language across the East, all of these outlasted him, shaping the ancient world for centuries. The story of Alexander is both inspiring and complex, and I want to be honest with you about both. Alexander was without doubt one of the most extraordinary leaders and strategists in all of human history. His energy, his intelligence, his courage, and his vision were remarkable. His campaigns opened the world, connected distant peoples, and helped spread knowledge across vast distances. The cities he founded became centers of learning and trade that enriched whole civilizations. But he was also a conqueror, and conquest brings suffering. Many people died in his wars. Peoples were forced under his rule. We can admire the brilliance without pretending that its human cost was small. What Alexander most powerfully teaches us is the force of vision and will. He believed completely in what he was doing. He inspired others to follow him to the edge of the world. His certainty was magnetic. People around him felt that with Alexander, impossible things became possible. And yet his story also teaches us something quieter, and perhaps more important, that even the greatest conqueror cannot conquer everything. His soldiers, at the edge of the world, reminded him of something he had forgotten, that human beings have limits, and that the love of home and family is a power even Alexander could not overcome. The greatest strength in the world cannot conquer a heart that simply wants to go home. So tonight, why do I tell you this epic story? Because Alexander reminds us of the power of direction, of knowing what you want and refusing to be stopped on the way there. He had a vision, and he followed it with everything he had. Your journey with English is your own campaign. There will be difficult days, when the vocabulary feels impossible, when grammar is like a mountain pass you cannot cross. But remember, Alexander, he was never stopped by obstacles. He found another way around, or he pushed through. So can you. One word, one sentence, one small march forward each day. Alexander's world became larger with every step he took, and so does yours. Every time you learn something new in English, the world opens before you, little by little, the way it opened before him, one brave step at a time. If this story inspired you, please give it a like and subscribe to Streamline English. It truly helps us grow. And tell me in the comments, was Alexander truly great or just a brilliant conqueror? What do you think? Until next time, my friend, keep marching forward and have a wonderful day.